I fear not the dark itself, but what may lurk within it. Welcome to Lurk, bringing you creepy, strange, and bone-chilling stories, with your host, Jamie Jackson.
Hey Lurkers, welcome to episode 46. This week we're traveling to Europe, specifically to Romania, though we won't be talking about any vampires, or the vampire Vlad Dracul. Instead we're going to be visiting a location called the most haunted forest in Europe, the Hoia Baciu. The Hoia Baciu is located in the Transylvania area on the outskirts of the city of Cluj-Napoca, in the northern area of Romania. Cluj-Napoca is also referred to just as Cluj. Romania is the 12th largest country in Europe, and it was under communist rule from 1948 until 1989. It borders Bulgaria to the south, the Ukraine to the north, Hungary in the west, and Serbia to the southwest, and then Moldova and the Carpathian Mountains to the east. Moldova and Carpathia might sound a little familiar to some of you. You may remember Vigo von Homburg Deutschendorf, Scourge of Carpathia, Sorrow of Moldavia, Vigo the Carpathian, Vigo the Cruel, Vigo the Torturer. He's the guy in the creepy painting that tried to possess baby Oscar, which led to the Statue of Liberty being animated and saving the day. I am, of course, talking about Ghostbusters 2, because I'm a nerd. Vigo was not real, the Carpathian Mountains are real, and so is the forest that we're going to be talking about. Hoia Baciu means shepherd's forest, I think. I'm pretty sure, but it's kind of hard to find out definitively, because when you try to find the translation, all the searches just want to share all the creepy stuff about the forest. It's that creepy. The forest is about 730 acres, located in the Transylvania region, as I said. It's also called the Bermuda Triangle of Romania. Some people claim the forest is inhabited by the devil himself. There are many stories and accounts of UFO sightings, ghosts, disappearances, and strange shadows. One well-known disappearance story is that of a shepherd who went missing into the forest with 200 of his sheep. He and his sheep went in, and they never came out. There were search parties sent looking for them, but nothing was ever found. The shepherd and all of his sheep simply vanished, and no traces of the man or the animals have ever been found. It's this story that is said to have given the forest its name, Shepherd's Forest, or Hoia Baciu. The Hoia Baciu has a long and ancient history. Between 1960 and 1994, archaeologists uncovered an ancient settlement belonging to the Starchevo-Koros-Kres culture, dating back to 6500 BC. These were groupings of two related Neolithic cultures that were based primarily on cultivation of crops from the Fertile Crescent. They bred livestock and supplemented their food by hunting deer and wild boar and fishing. There were several tombs and dwellings discovered during the excavation. Some people believe that some of the strangeness surrounding the forest comes from these ancient people, though I'm not really sure why. There was no explanation about why these ancient people would create strangeness in a forest thousands of years later. Maybe it's the ghost of these people. I don't know. Even the landscape of the forest is strange. The trees of the forest grow in odd ways. Some are twisted at the trunk and crooked and growing in odd angles. In other areas, there are 7 to 8 trees growing from a single set of roots. Some of the 200-year-old trees appear to be much younger. Many twist clockwise, they grow sideways, and form archways with their gnarled roots. Many of the trees are devoid of greenery, and some contain strange burn marks. But the trees aren't the only strange thing. The forest is full of strange stories. There's one that tells the story of a little 5-year-old girl who went into the woods and disappeared. People searched for her, but like the shepherd and his flock, they found no sign of her. No sign of her, that is, until 5 years later, when she walked out of the woods, dressed in the same clothing that she had been wearing when she disappeared, and she was clean and hadn't aged at all in the 5 years. Now, take that story with a grain of salt. It's a popular legend of the forest, but there's no information to give, the date, the name, nothing. So all you get is 5-year-old girl goes into the forest, disappears for 5 years, walks out of the forest, hasn't aged, wearing the same clothes. That's it. There was a woman who also disappeared after being overcome with an odd feeling. And when she reappeared, she discovered a 15th century coin in her pocket with no explanation on how it got there. Like the 5-year-old girl, there is no identifying information. There's no date of this disappearance. There's no name associated with it. Other people have described strange blackouts and moments where they unintentionally experience astral projection, where they were able to watch their body on the forest floor before being suddenly forced back into their body. A quick refresher about astral projection, because I know that Angelina and I mentioned this many episodes ago. I'm going to say the Shadow People episode off the top of my head, but I'm not 100%. So a quick refresher, astral projection is basically, and this is according to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, it's the ability of a person's spirit to travel to distant places. This is done intentionally and sometimes unintentionally, and the person is still alive. It's not an experience because you've died. This is like you can lay in bed. Some people are able to do this at will, where you can lay down and will your spirit to leave your body while you're still alive and travel to other places. It's a thing. People do it. I know people who do it. It sounds strange. We really need to do an episode on this. So back to the disappearances. There have been an estimated 1,000 disappearances in the Hoia Baciu. These stories and the story of the disappearing shepherd and his flock have led many to speculate that the forest is home to a portal into another time, another world, or another dimension. People who enter the forest sometimes come out with burns, severe rashes, headaches, fevers, nausea. There was information I found that mentioned there were higher than usual radioactivity measured in the area due to the naturally occurring uranium in the soil. I looked up some symptoms of radiation poisoning, and they include nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, fever, weakness, fatigue, headache, dizziness, hair loss, infection, and low blood pressure. I somehow doubt that low levels of naturally occurring uranium would be able to produce these problems, especially since this is produced on a regular basis. Not everyone has these symptoms. Most of the activity seems to be centered around an area of the forest where no trees will grow, and it forms a roundish shape. Some information says that it's a perfect circle. It's not. You can actually see it on Google Maps. It's not a perfect circle. It's kind of round-ish, oval, but no trees grow in it. The area is called the Poiana Rotunda, or the Round Meadow. The soil has been tested in the meadow, and there is nothing anomalous to indicate why trees won't grow there. Some people say it's just because it's a meadow. I kind of feel as though, even if it's just a meadow, if there's nothing preventing the trees from seeding themselves and starting to grow, it's kind of odd because it's been that way for a long time, and you would think the forest would reclaim that clearing if there's nothing preventing it from doing that. So in the area of the Poiana Rotunda, there have been photos taken of extraterrestrial lights and mysterious spheres. This area of Hoia Baciu attracts Romanian witches, sword-wielding Americans, and people who try to cleanse the forest of evil through yoga. It also attracts Satan worshippers and Wiccans. I have no idea why Americans are wielding swords. It's not really a thing here in America that I know of. I don't have any friends who wield swords in paranormal locations. I don't really get the meaning behind it, but apparently there are sword-wielding Americans who hang out in this circle in the haunted forest. Weird. There's one guide who claims that he came across 60 people from Bucharest trying to open a gate into another dimension in the clearing. I don't know about you, but this really doesn't sound like it would be a good idea. To get into a little bit more specific information, on August 18th, 1968, the Hoia Baciu began receiving notoriety when a man by the name of Emil Barnia managed to snap a photo of an unidentified flying object. I believe he actually snapped several photos of the object. Emil Barnia was a 45-year-old construction technician and former military officer who was in the forest that day with his girlfriend, Zamfira Matea, who was 34, and employed by a charity organization. They were joined by another couple, though their names have never been released to my knowledge. The four were preparing to get a fire started. It was about 1:23 p.m., the sun was shining, and it was about 36 degrees Celsius, or 96.8 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't know why they needed the fire, but Emil was collecting wood when his girlfriend called out to him. He looked to where she pointed and saw a large round craft in the sky, just above the Poiana Rotunda. It appeared metallic as it reflected the sun and was completely noiseless. All four adults witnessed the object. The object remained floating just above the tree line for about 2 minutes, long enough for Emil Barnia to grab his camera and take a few photos. Then the object sped away. Now it's important to remember that at this time, Romania was a communist country, and the government equated a belief in the paranormal with madness and state sabotage. You did not tell people that you believed in the paranormal. You just didn't do that. But despite this, Emil Barnia was compelled to immediately report the sighting to authorities. He had nothing to gain from doing this, and everything to lose. The authorities, of course, rejected his evidence, claiming it was nothing but a weather balloon. The photos that Emil took were published in local newspapers, and they were explained away as weather balloons, blimps, or tampered photos. But the photos and the negatives, because this is before digital photography, folks, we're using film, the photos and the negatives were examined by more than one expert, and all of them agreed that the photos were authentic and they had not been tampered with in any way. It was estimated using the photos that the object was 30 meters or 98 feet in diameter. Going public with his sighting cost Emil Barnia his job and his reputation. He was labeled an alcoholic and an ignorant illiterate. Honestly, who would knowingly sabotage their own life for a made-up story? In my opinion, that gives a ton of credence to what he saw. All four of these people witnessed it. Emil was the only one who officially came out to report it. The other couple that was there, they remained anonymous. They didn't want any parts of revealing anything. In fact, one of the photos that he took of the object had the couple in it, and I don't think that's ever been published to protect their identities. I will be sharing the photos on social media. There was another man by the name of Alexandru Sift who spent time in Hoia Baciu taking photos and notes on the forest. He began investigating the forest in the 1950s. Sift was a biologist and while in the forest, he noted feeling as though he was constantly being accompanied and watched by presences. He called them shadows. These shadows sometimes took the shape of a couple, a man and a woman, who would disappear into thin air as soon as they caught sight of Sift. Alexandru Sift did manage to catch the man on camera once, right after the woman disappeared, and just as the man was disappearing. Sift amassed quite a collection of photos and notes over the decades, and when he died in 1994, most of his collection was stolen and destroyed. There are many different paranormal experiences people have had in Hoia Baciu. There's a jogging path through the forest where joggers have witnessed strange ectoplasmic fog forming. People have seen mysterious orbs of light. Paranormal investigators have actually filmed the strange lights in the woods at night, and when they have checked for a heat signature with a FLIR camera, there is no heat given off at all, which at least rules out someone in the woods with a flashlight. Disembodied voices are heard, mostly female voices, and giggling that sounds like it's coming from a child. Many people entering the forest experience missing time, which goes back to those stories of the people disappearing and reappearing and not remembering where they were. Electromagnetic field detectors pick up unexplained high spikes of EMF, and electronic devices fail to work properly. There are quite a few instances where people who have ventured into the Hoia Baciu have a feeling of overwhelming fear and anxiety, and end up with unexplainable rashes, scratches, and bruising. People have seen a haunting pair of green eyes looking at them through the trees, and they have been pushed. Some report seeing a thick black fog in the woods. Maybe it's like the smoke monster on Lost. There are a few people who claim that they have experienced flashbacks to painful, repressed memories while they were in Hoia Baciu. Screams of young girls echo through the woods, too. During a paranormal investigation, one member of the team was thrown and ended up with scratches on his arms. It was all caught on camera. He said he heard female voices coming from different areas of the woods right before he felt a large gust of wind, like the wind shot directly at him, and he had a tickling, itchy feeling and felt like a static shock. Many refer to this as an energy discharge, and there have been other people who have been pushed back 2, 3, and even 4 meters. A woman who has lived next to the Hoia Baciu for 35 years remembers at least 7 people who have hung themselves in the forest. She believes the negative energy of the forest drove them to do it. Locals claim that those who enter Hoia Baciu with ill intentions are shown for what they are before getting punishment. There are people who have actually spent time camping in Hoia Baciu, and a couple of them have had some strange stories. I would imagine they have had some strange stories. I am not really keen on, hey, let's go spend the night in the haunted forest in the middle of Transylvania. No thanks. Okay, that's a lie. I would totally do it. If I could get there, I would totally camp in the Hoia Baciu. I would camp in the middle of the flippin' Poiana Rotunda with a sword. Okay, not with the sword, because I wouldn't be able to check that on the airplane, so that was just, throwback to the sword-wielding Americans. Back to the people who are camping. One person said that while they were in their tent at night, they were woken up by the sound of a large hoofed animal, like a horse or a large deer. Each time they looked outside the tent, the noise would stop, only to move closer and get louder once they were back in the tent. Another group was camping in the forest doing an investigation. A couple of the members were walking around the woods when they came upon an old man walking in the trees. The old man asked them how to get to Cluj. They told him to follow the road, and the man set off on the road headed for Cluj. The way he was traveling would have brought him directly through the Poiana Rotunda and the base camp where the other members of the group were located. When the people who had spoken to the old man returned to camp, they asked if the man had come through, but no one had seen him, and he never showed up. Another time, a group was driving through the woods at night when the driver slammed on his brakes because he was certain that he had just hit an old woman who had stepped out into the road in front of the car. The passengers all got out to look, but there was nothing there. They spread out and searched a 1-kilometer area in case the woman was injured and managed to walk away. But no sign of anyone was found, and there was no indication that the vehicle had actually struck something or someone. There's a story that hundreds of years ago, a large group of peasants were murdered there in Hoia Baciu, and many of these experiences stem from the spirits of these peasants still inhabiting the woods. Apparently, they're pretty ticked off that they were murdered. But I'm not done with the odd stories. Romania is home to one of the largest brown bear populations in Europe. They also have the Transylvanian wolves and deer, but sometimes people see strange and unexpected animals. One time, there was a rare bird that was nearly extinct and definitely not native to the area that was seen in the woods. When people went to trap the bird, it disappeared. There was also mention of a sighting of a large cat, specifically a leopard, in the forest, and that definitely isn't something that would be native to Romania. These strange animal sightings kind of make me lean towards portal dimension, different world, back and forth. If people can slip through a portal into another dimension or another time, then certainly animals can unknowingly step through them as well. I guess. That's just my opinion. People who take photos in the woods get photos that include faces and figures that aren't seen by the naked eye, similar to the photos Alexandru Sift captured. Chemistry professor Adrian Petrut, who is also the president of the Romanian Society of Parapsychology, has been researching Hoia Baciu. Because his background as a professor of chemistry, his research methods are scientific in nature. Still, Adrian Petrut has had some interesting and odd encounters. I'm going to share with you his encounters that I found in a magazine article, and the original article was written in Romanian. I don't speak Romanian, so I had it translated, so some of the wording, I tried to fix it where I could, but if it sounds a little odd, it's because that's just how it translated. So Adrian Petrut shared this story. In 1975, I had gone to photograph some ruins. They were right in the middle of the forest. It was January, and I took a few hundred photos of those ruins with a very large group of friends. After about 2 weeks, I went back to look for that place because I liked it. I felt good there. But the ruins were no longer there, as if they had never been, and no one has ever seen them since. And after a few years, their images also disappeared. They simply volatilized from my photos. Just a quick vocab lesson. Volatilize means that a substance evaporates or disperses in vapor. I'm going to guess that that's a word that's used quite a bit in chemistry. I was never a fan of chemistry, but I'm going to guess that that's a science word. Another one of Adrian Petrut's stories is a little harder to believe, and yet, with the other similar stories, it kind of isn't hard to believe. He says that in 1989, he was in Hoia Baciu with some students. He and one of the students were at the edge of the forest, just 50 meters from the city, on the south coast, which leads to Somesul Mic, and from where you can see the whole city in a beautiful and panoramic opening. And then something happened to the girl. This is what Adrian Petrut shared. I saw her be silent and lost in a trance for an hour. And when she woke up, she told us something strange. Suddenly, she had begun to see old Cluj more than 50 years ago. Not only had she seen it, but she had walked for an hour, her trance hour, through Cluj without blocks. She had walked its streets and boulevards as they had appeared, before and during the war. For a while we all listened to her, some more confident, some more skeptical, and then we went to the bus. The end of the story was amazing. When she went to pay, the girl found in her pocket a silver coin of 100 lei with the face of King Mihai appeared from nowhere. It was proof that she had really been in the past for an hour. She had traveled. She had not had a simple backstory. It's hard to think. Like I said, I apologize. It's difficult to read because that's the translation. Basically, she goes to pay the bus driver, and when she pulls the change out of her pocket, she has this silver coin in her hand. Now, the coin that he mentions was in circulation in 1943, so the war that he's talking about is World War II. Silver is no longer used in coins. I know here in the United States, quarters before the year 1964 and older, meaning years prior to 1964, those quarters have silver. So, like, if you're a prepper, you save those are the quarters you want to barter for when, the dollar collapses. I'm not saying it's collapsing. I'm not saying I'm a prepper. It's information that I know. The story of this woman in 1989 is similar to the woman who disappeared and reappeared with the 15th century coin in her pocket. In my opinion, it sounds almost as if this woman in 1989 was astral projecting to a place in history and actually experiencing it. And that lends credence to the theory of the portal to another dimension, or time, or simply an opening between the astral plane and our current one. I don't think there's an easy explanation for this location at all, because I think there are numerous explanations. I believe perhaps there is some type of portal or kink in time that may let people through to other times and places, and also allows animals to come into our world. I think there are spirits in the woods from those who have passed, and I think that UFOs are possibly drawn to the location because of its strange properties. The area is known to give off infrasound, which is sound below 20 hertz, and this infrasound is able to produce some pretty bizarre effects, like anxiety, extreme sorrow, and chills. So perhaps this is an explanation for some of the feelings that people experience. No matter what, the Hoia Baciu is a strange and fascinating place. And if the world ever gets back to normal, I would love to travel there and check it out. If you have a theory about what's going on in the Hoia Baciu, please feel free to send it my way at lurkpodcast@yahoo.com. You can always share your thoughts and theories on different topics. You can share topic suggestions you have. You can share paranormal stories that you would like me to save and use for an episode in the future. So that's going to do it for this episode. As always, you can find Lurk wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, or you can find us at lurkpodcast.com, and there on the website you'll find the episodes and links to our social media accounts. We would love for you to follow us and join in a conversation. If you like the podcast, please consider giving us a 5-star review. That helps our podcast be suggested to others who enjoy similar topics. Don't forget, we have merch available at lurkpodcastmerch.com. We also have the Virginia Bigfoot Conference coming up June 18th in Staunton, Virginia. I will be sharing information on that on our social media accounts, and I will probably post it in show notes at some point. So we will be there vending, and there are a couple other podcasts that are going to be there. Lots of vendors. I think the Transformers are going to be there. It's supposed to be a big, huge thing. So look forward to that. Also, September 24th in the fall, Whitehall will be doing its Sasquatch Calling Festival. Lurk was there last year. It was awesome, and planning on being back there again this year. It was a really great festival. A lot of efforts put into it. It's well run, well organized, a lot of fun. It was really crazy busy, and it's a beautiful location right there on the canal in Whitehall. So if you're in the area, Put it on your calendar, come down and check that out. Until next time, keep lurking.